Pima Community College Information Series, When and How to Refer to ADR. As an instructor or staff member, you may start to notice something about a particular student in one or more of your classes, or perhaps when advising them. You may be thinking, there's something different about this student. I didn't get a letter from ADR, but I think I should have. I have several materials in my class, but this one student isn't able to use them the way I intended. He gets really anxious when I call on him, and/or his responses have nothing to do with what we were discussing. I feel this student has an obvious disability, and I should be doing more. The student appears socially awkward. With group work, she doesn't seem to fit in. You may think that this student has an obvious disability, or you'd like him or her to seek help. However, avoid jumping to conclusions. It's very important that you don't make assumptions about the reasons for the difficulties you've observed the student having, and never attempt to diagnose or suggest that the student has a disability. Instead, approach the conversation with an inquisitive mind and focus on asking questions that could help the student provide explanations. Let's look at some ways to engage the student with these questions. Number 1, talk about your observations. For example, you could say to the student that you are concerned and that you have noticed they failed exams, or perhaps they seem lost or bored or having difficulty paying attention. Maybe you've noticed that they haven't been turning in homework, or it's done incorrectly. Or perhaps there are other observations that shows them why you have a concern in order to open up this conversation. Number 2, formulate questions that are open-ended and try to avoid yes and no questions if possible. For example, ask things like, what do you think is holding you back? What do you think would help you? What can I do to help you? It's important to try to get the student talking. Stick to your observations and let the student reveal to you what they feel comfortable revealing. Though you are only trying to be helpful and supportive, the student may be coming into this conversation with a long history of people making assumptions about their abilities. These assumptions may be associated with the disability, or may be associated with how they behave or look. The assumptions you make may feel invasive, unfair, or stereotyping to them, and not supportive. Obviously, this is not your intention. Therefore, let them stay in control of your developing understanding of who they are and what their needs are by simply asking questions. Of course, all these discussions should be conducted in an environment that you and the student feel provides for confidentiality. Number 3, how the student responds will help determine your response. They may say, well, I've always had a learning disability, or in high school, I had an IEP for accommodations. In these cases, when the student has clearly ascribed their difficulties to something related to a disability, you can refer them directly to the ADR office. However, the student may not want to disclose or say anything, or maybe say, no, there's no problem, I just need to buckle down and study harder. For that, you could then explain the full array of services available, such as your office hours, counseling, tutoring, ADR, and so on, and let the student decide from there. Even if a student has a disability, there's no guarantee he or she will follow through, but at least you've let them know that help is available. Now, what if the student comes to you first and asks for some type of arrangement or accommodation? They might say something like, I've got X disability and I need more time on assignments. I need more time to finish my tests. I might need to leave the room sometimes during class. All my past teachers would just let me do this. I may be out sick due to my disability, and I don't want it to count against me. Can I get an audiobook for your class? If the student makes a statement which explicitly refers to a disability or disability service, such as, I've got X disability and I need more time on assignments, and I may be out sick due to my disability and I don't want it to count against me, you could refer them directly to ADR. For the other statements, the student describes situations that could be interpreted as accommodations for a disability, but they did not explicitly say so. As mentioned earlier, you can either provide them information on a range of available services or ask follow-up questions. For example, if the student states, "All my past teachers would just let me do this," you could ask them, "Why did your past teachers give you extra time?" For, "I need more time to finish my tests," you could ask, "Why do you feel you need extra time on tests?" A simple rule of thumb: if a student refers to a disability specifically, refer them to ADR. If they question you about the process, you can refer them to the class syllabus or PCC website about making accommodation requests through ADR. A quick note: students may not always use the word disability or associate their condition with a disability, and yet still be eligible for services from ADR. They may mention temporary disabilities from injuries, surgery, illness, or conditions related to pregnancy. They might use the term IEP or 504 plan, ISP, or resource room instruction in high school, or mention an emotional or physical condition that impacts their ability to meet classroom expectations. You can refer them to ADR by saying something like, "I heard you mentioned recovering from an injury that may be negatively affecting your work in this class. ADR here at the college can provide you more information on the supports and resources that may be available to help students who have conditions that you mentioned." Most importantly, however, if a student says something that you are not sure if it warrants a referral, contact the ADR office for advice prior to referring the student. Or again, point out the available array of support services at the college. Finally, a word about behavior issues. Remember these three things. Treat the student as you would anyone else who displays similar behavior. Even if you've received an accommodation letter from us, all students are expected to follow the code of conduct, whether or not they have a disability. If you or other students feel threatened or uncomfortable with the behavior, refer to the college's code of conduct process. Thanks for watching, and thanks for your interest in Access for All.